Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new tutorial. Today we're creating this cool animation, a tunnel made of individual modular elements. I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to drop a like or subscribe to the channel. As always, we'll start with a clean scene and add a circle first. We'll turn that into a pentagon and rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis. You will have to bear with me as I turn on the screen recording and the screencast keys first. We'll create a wide face. Duplicate it, make it a bit larger and narrower, and we're done. Next, let's add a solidify modifier to give the surface some thickness. Apply it, and that's it. For a cleaner look, we'll add a bevel modifier to round off the edges and smooth everything out. Most importantly, don't forget to apply the scale. Now let's add some decorative borders for a bit of extra flair. Like I said, it's entirely up to you what kind of details you want to add. I'm just giving you the ideas so you can get started. What you make of it is your choice. I'll delete the unnecessary faces now. We'll duplicate this element 2, 3, and 4 times. This is now one component of our object which will turn into a collection. Let's add a curve in the center and create a path however you like. Again, you can decide for yourself how the path should look. With curves, remember, the more control points you have, the smoother the motion will be later. Let's join these elements into a single object. We'll add an array modifier and a curve modifier to it. Increase the count until the loop is completely filled. Fine-tuning the fit is always a bit tricky. Since I made the curves too sharp, I'm going to round them out a little more. That looks good now, but it's not quite centered yet. Sometimes I really struggle with the alignment. I'm no pro, so I always have to experiment to see what works best. But you guys know how it is. That's totally normal. The object needs to be perfectly centered on the curve. Otherwise, the camera will move unevenly later. Let's set the camera to follow path and select the curve as the target. Make sure all the values are set to 0. After that, we'll add an empty to serve as the camera's focal point. We'll place that on the curve path as well. The empty needs to stay a bit ahead of the camera. As you can see, I've already set up the track, but it's not quite perfect yet. Look at this. The curve isn't set to the correct frame rate of 600 yet. To get a smooth motion without jittering, the curve needs more subdivisions. Now it's running much smoother, just a little more fine-tuning to make it look professional. This is where you can let your creativity run wild. I'll throw in a light bulb just for testing, even though I'll probably remove it later. The light bulb also gets assigned to the curve path. I just want to see how it looks. It's coming out later anyway. Don't forget to save your work. I can be a bit lazy about it sometimes and forget constantly. I really recommend saving a backup as early as possible. When it comes to shading, you can really go all out and try everything. You can use a wave texture to create a smooth transition for the animation. Now let's add the different color elements. I have a thing for colorful designs. I would assume most people do. So here we'll add a noise texture and try to place it so we get some cool patterns. We'll animate that as well so the texture moves dynamically instead of looking static. It's looking pretty good, but let's refine it a bit more. It really depends on what you're going for. I've split the objects and assigned a different texture to the second part so it doesn't all look identical. When everything isn't spinning in the same direction, it gives the scene a whole different vibe. That's all part of the fine tuning. Now, I'm going to edit the borders separately. The borders are getting an emission shader, which adds another layer of colored light. This is starting to look good and is all part of the creative process. To hide the rest of the path in the background, I'm adding a volume to the world texture. We'll set it to black and adjust the density so the background fades away. This creates the effect that you're actually inside a tunnel. We can crank up the emission values to make the lights glow more intensely. A few more small adjustments. The individual struts are getting their own separate lighting too. That way they act as a sort of guidepost, which looks really cool visually. But honestly, there are so many Blender pros out there. Hats off to what those guys can do. On one hand, it's enviable, but on the other, I have talents they might not have. Everyone has their own unique gifts. For creating video loops like this, my skills are more than enough for me. Of course, you could build extremely complex loops with animated 3D blocks, but I simply don't have the time for that. I have a job and I'm completely self-taught. When I started, I knew nothing, and after a year of practice, this is where I am. You just have to stick with it. Practice makes perfect, as the saying goes. And if people enjoy what I'm making here, that's great validation. Of course, there's always room for improvement, and you can always get better. But once you've learned these skills, you won't lose them easily. You just keep building on them. Now, for a bit more fine tuning to make it look right. To get some particles floating in the background like in space, we'll create a volume with particles. The particles should just float in space and not fly toward the viewer. We'll create a cube for that. And of course, we need the particles. We'll use a tiny, tiny sphere for those. I made the spheres a bit smaller. That should do for now. You can obviously add a lot more to it. That's entirely up to you. Let's activate the particle system in that cube. We'll add a few thousand particles and select volume as the source. Now, we'll turn off gravity so the particles just float in the background. We need to create a perfect loop. With particles, it's important to have two systems in one object. Since I have 600 frames, I'll run the first system from frame minus 300 to plus 300 and the second from plus 300 to plus 900. This results in a seamless transition at the end. That's how you generate a perfect loop. After that is back to fine-tuning, setting the visibility, colors, and size of the particles. I'm putting in a good amount of particles so you can really see them. I'll turn off the test lamp now, I don't need it anymore. One last camera adjustment to capture the scene better. You can use as many particles as you want. The only question is, can your PC handle it? You just have to test it out. I'm duplicating the particle systems now. It's important to make them independent of each other. Here, I'll set the animation to frames 300 to 900 as mentioned and bake the cache first, but this won't work yet because the velocity is set to 5. That's way too high. I just wanted to see how it looked first. Luckily, the baking is pretty fast. As you can see, the particles are just flying away because of the high velocity. So now we need to go back to the particle fine-tuning. Okay, here we are. And guys, don't forget to save. I just did it now myself. Now you see why the particle issue isn't that big of a deal. I decided to just build a sort of tunnel around the curve. That's the safest way to go. You can do that too. It saves a ton of particles because you don't have to fill the whole room. You only need them in the area around the curve. It gives it a completely different look. Just some final adjustments now. For this case, 256 samples is more than enough resolution. Don't forget to turn on motion blur. Play around with the settings a bit until you're happy with it. We'll set it to 150% for 4K resolution. Pick the save path and save it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please leave a comment and a thumbs up. Have fun trying it out yourself. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them.